everyone to our next session. Now we have a presentation from Przemek, Berendt, who is the CEO and co-founder of Talent Alpha, and Dominika, Zaremba, who is Head of Talent Science, Cognitive Psychologist at Talent Alpha. They will present on how to manage your IT workforce in the new reality. It's a pleasure to welcome you both to the HR360 Virtual Summit. Now over to you both to kickstart your presentation.
Thank you. It's our pleasure to be here, and we have a fully loaded agenda for today, so we'll dive right into that. And feel free to chime in your questions in the Q&A box so we can discuss them at the end of this session. We are going to cover quite a few things, looking into how the reality around us is shaping and what is its impact on the workforce, but then we'll dive into some of the solutions on what can companies do to better manage the workforce, and specifically the IT workforce in the future, spending quite a bit of time, and that's why we have Dominika, who's heading our talent science team within Talent Alpha, talking about talent analytics, and we'll close it with talking about our concept of what we call the human cloud. So starting with what has been happening over the past 3 months. It goes without saying that we are living in an unprecedented times. No business could have been ready for what started happening to us around March 2020. And we've looked into how companies are coping with those changes happening around us. And what we've realized is that companies are moving through different stages. First, of course, all of us got disrupted one way or the other. Either our business suddenly stopped and basically smashed into a wall, or it actually started growing like on steroids, because we were actually on this part of the market that allowed us to do that. But majority of us who were disrupted in the negative way had to focus on securing the service continuity that resulted in actually freezing major decisions within the company. And also, what was very important at that stage, looking after the health and care of our employees. And then many of the businesses moved into the second stage, which is survival, trying to figure out what this new reality means to them and adjusting to the volatile situation that was happening. That's where we at Talent Alpha, and many of us, I'm sure on the line as well, looked into all of the data, trying to make up your mind on what the future holds. And of course, it's hard to predict exactly how things will play out, but all of the companies who are building the new business scenarios are trying to find a spot in which and how they could function in the new reality. And then the typical next step in the survival stage is actually looking into the workforce that you have on board. The smaller organizations like startups did it very quickly. We could see it in the numbers announced in the Silicon Valley, where we could see major cuts in all of the organizations. Us at Talent Alpha, unfortunately, we also had to go through a fair amount of reorganization. The large organizations, first try to secure all of the headcount, hoping that they will be able to survive this period of ambiguity. But what we believe is happening right now, everyone is actually taking a longer perspective view, trying to figure out how the results of the business are going to be shaped and what is the impact of COVID on the business results. And there is a result of that, rebuilding and rethinking their strategies going forward. So that's where we are entering the third stage of the actually building for the new reality, where the new and bold business decisions are required. And also, what is very important, trying to figure out the new ways of managing talent. So if you look into the headline of what has happened with the workforce and businesses in general, right? And there are just a few examples, from companies in India that were very were big suppliers of outsourcing services, actually locking down, where thousands of people didn't show up for work the next day. Growing unemployment on the other hand, or some of the most tech advanced companies making actually decisions to allow people working permanently from home. Now we all started working remotely, and something that 6 months ago for many companies was a challenge and was not something that they would have accepted before, now became part of our reality. In fact, for us at Talent Alpha, we used to debate with clients whether there are benefits or downfalls of remote work. As of COVID, this conversation is no longer valid. So how is the world shifting in this new reality? And we looked at it from the 4 different perspectives, trying to compare the world that we used to know with the new reality that we are about to face, or it's actually happening around us as we speak. So from the business perspective, what we've seen before is that businesses were focused on growth and driving the shareholder value. Expansion was basically the number one strategy. What we believe COVID will do to businesses in general is actually that the focus will be on resilience, or growing resilience, and the better sustainability. So shall a next event like that occur in the future, the business will be way better prepared and will not be caught cold-handed in that setup. Of course, in the supply chains, the just-in-time, I think COVID proved that the just-in-time supply chains of globally connected resources, they are actually a big risk to keeping operations going. So what we believe will happen with supply chains is they will shift from just-in-time to just-in-case. This also applies, in our opinion, to the workforce supply chains, where we'll be looking into how talent can be supplied to organizations in a more agile way. So the shift that we are predicting is that companies will actually move from focusing on building full-time employees, or actually building an internal workforce assets, to trying to figure out new, more agile models, which is something that we'll be sharing with you today, where there will be more focus on actually the job to be done and the skills required to get that job done. So when it comes to talent management, which is where we are going to focus today, is that they will be moving from managing headcount, making sure we have enough people in our roles, to trying to find systems that will allow us to manage skill count. So this is actually a major shift that we are expecting to happen, from managing headcount to managing skill count, which is confirmed by McKinsey. And what they say is they call it the next normal environment. They said that in order to achieve the resilience, companies will actually have to find those new ways while keeping the cost, or actually driving the cost down. This really requires a fair amount of creativity and new approaches to get to make that happen. And hopefully we'll share with you today some recipes of how this could be done. Well, there have been discussions about investing in so-called future of work and upskilling in the past. JP Morgan announced $350 million global investment into the future of work. Heads of HR by the research from Gartner claimed that 86% of HR technology readers said that it's very important for them to have those critical skills and competencies for their organization to thrive in the future. However, the gap, and the tech talent gap and skills gap, is widening. Yes, on one hand, we have growing unemployment, but on the other hand, those who are qualified to thrive in this new digital reality, there are not that many, right? So we'll have to, we believe that the talent gap will be widening over time. So before COVID, when we now zoom in from this global perspective to the IT talent perspective, the tech talent gap has been estimated at roughly 9 million vacancies around the globe. Roughly 1 million in the US, another 500,000 in the EU, and a stunning 7.5 million in China. Now, we could expect that COVID is going to shift the environment slightly, where actually from the employee market we'll have switched to the employer market, which is kind of the dent that we see now in 2020, as you can see in the numbers coming from the staffing industry analysts. And in fact, that's what we see as a supplier of talent, that the appetite for bringing new talent on board has frozen. However, what everyone is expecting, that starting 2021 and post-2021, this will accelerate to the unprecedented levels. The reason being is that, as we all know, that the businesses that are thriving today, they are digital businesses, and those businesses for whom digital was basically the core, right? And the only strategy for survival going in the future will be to become a digital business. That requires digital talent to achieve that. So what does this mean to the world post-COVID, or the HR function post-COVID? How does this all translate into your daily job? So what we believe is that there will be a number of shifts happening at different dimensions, moving from people and positions to rather focusing on the jobs to be done, meaning the tasks, and the skills required to do that. Think about how well do you actually understand the skill set that your company currently have on the payroll? How deeply have you mapped out those competencies? Do you understand who can actually upskill to a certain position. Many companies in our research are actually blind when it comes to what assets they currently have on board. We'll be also looking into moving from paying for work to more nimble models for paying to result. That then translates into moving from focusing on hiring in-house resources to trying to find more effective way to bringing required human resources on board. And this translates into the type of the engagement, which is, moving from long-term careers, in some cases lifetime careers, to actually very flexible models where we can easily turn off and off the employment or the capacity that we have in the skills. When it comes to how we would be managing the talent, what we believe will be happening is that from the layer that was hard to quantify, where we were relying on the experience and the intuition of the managers, we would be moving more into talent analytics and really trying to measure the workforce with the tools that we have at our disposal. And then moving from the emphasis on the direct relationship with the person doing the tasks, actually focusing on finding common goals, alignment, becoming a data-driven and also bias-free organization with feedback loops embedded into them. So how have been companies dealing with that in the past? There's, of course, many of you are familiar with the concept of the total workforce management, where we look beyond only the full-time employees that we have on board. Often case the mix would look similar to what you can see on this chart, with full-time employees, outsourcing partners providing part of your headcount, also having a fair amount of B2B contractors kind of mirroring the permanent employees, and a growing function of freelancers. There had been a lot of discussion about the world moving more towards gig, which is what we partially believe, because we believe that people will gravitate towards working into organizations and in teams, but the world will require a more flexible model to be available. And that's why more progressive companies are looking into models such as human cloud. They're trying to look into the different ways in which they could leverage talent sitting somewhere else in a more nimble way. It's a category that has been only recently defined by SIA, I believe 2 years ago is where the term was curved, but it's becoming more and more popular. Robotics and automation is, of course, yet another way in which most progressive companies are looking to augment the existing workforce, and then tapping into all types of networks where talent might be available, even reaching as deep as alumni. Now, we believe that once all of this transition happens and the respective technologies and capabilities are in place, the world will actually become one big human cloud. What we mean by that is a network of interconnected companies, individuals, organizations, really being able to share resources in a very agile and nimble way, allowing organizations to only scale up and scale down the skills required to get the job done. This also means that reskilling and upskilling is becoming increasingly important, specifically in managing IT talent. It is being said that the average shelf life of an IT skill on the market is about 5 years. Every year there are new technologies gaining on popularity that are making your organization even more productive. And pre-COVID, only 14% of organizations were looking into upskilling their workforce. However, 87% of them were experiencing skills gaps. So they were hoping to close those skill gaps, not by upskilling their existing workforce, but rather finding the necessary talent on the market. That need for upskilling will actually be higher in the new reality. Why? Well, a number of these new skills are simply not there. And there are new technologies showing up on the market very frequently. And the easiest way for you to get and building this competence is actually into upskilling the existing workforce. And in order to do that, you really need to be able to secure the best talent, right? So there is a concept in IT of so-called 10x developers. What is a 10x developer? Well, it's a person on your team who can make such a big contribution that it is an equivalent of 10 other developers working on the same team. It is being measured that the best employees, the best performance. If you really identify the talents and strengths of the employee and they become super productive, they can be up to 400% more productive than the average ones. Which also means that you really need to carefully think on, if you were to optimize your organization structure, who you should be cutting, because as it's been proven in the past, the companies that are actually cutting severely during crisis, they're actually they're losing in the long term with their competitors who are more secure when it comes to making cost cuts. Which brings us down to, like, then how do we really how can we really identify, you know, those best talents if there is no cross-industry benchmarks and definitions? So what we have on this screen is an example of a typical .NET developer job description. We basically took it from one of the job boards and we broke it down into a basic taxonomy, which represents the picture on how this particular company was trying to attract and recruit people from the market. Well, unfortunately, the world of IT, and specifically when it comes to software development, is not that easy. Because when you look 2 or 3 layers deep down, this is getting really complex. What you see on the right-hand side is a taxonomy that our AI algorithm built based on the data that we currently have in Talent Alpha Human Cloud. You can see hundreds of particular skill sets grouped together that represent a .NET developer. And this is the level of granularity that, in our opinion, companies need to gain in order to make those decisions in an educated way. I'll now pass it over to Dominika, who's heading our talent science team, to explain the model that we've put in place to drive that.
Okay, thanks, Przemek. So here what you see on the screen right now, it's a visualization of our model of IT talent that's been created in Talent Alpha. So this is the idea, and the idea we think you should look like comprehensively at people working in IT. So regarding technical skills, what you see on the left-hand side, you can take 3 types of approaches or perspectives on looking at these skills. So most of us look at the job experience, so the things that we can take out of the CV. So this is a length and breadth of the experience that the person has. And this is, as I mentioned, the standard in recruitment industry. But other things that we can measure and actually measure in our model is the procedural knowledge. So knowing how to get things done, how to code some functionality into the mobile app, for example, and the declarative knowledge. So the ability to tell what you can do and what you can declare in a form of a questionnaire, what is your area of expertise. So this is the part that we already gather in our model, and we create this technical part of the skills tree of the employee. When you take a look at the right-hand side, I would argue that the second part of the graph is just as important and can bring even more competitive advantage. These are non-tech talents, so these are less general, they're more generic, less domain specific, and they tend to cluster in domains such as cognitive abilities, temperamental strengths, social skills, motivational styles, and these, they impact how we perform at work, how we work in teams, and this also can be measured in a bit-sized mobile way that's very comprehensible and easy to do by specialists. So in Talent Alpha, we already have tools to measure these talents, and we use them. And we already see the value that comes from measuring non-technical skills. The challenges that we face in the IT world day by day are far beyond technical issues or coding problems. We work in teams, we work in a constantly changing environment, and non-technical skills play a big role in predicting and improving performance, satisfaction, engagement, and attrition rates. They allow better role and project matching. When you need to get a new team member on the team and you need to match to the existing team the new person, they let you build a deeper understanding of team dynamics and let you build this additional value. Okay, next slide. So it's an impossible task to list all of the relevant psychometrics that you should capture. I came up with this list that's coming up from research, not only our research, but also decades of research in organizational and industrial psychology. And I've listed them, prioritizing those that are most generic, that are important for many roles. For example, general mental ability, working memory, thinking styles and types of approaches to teamwork, motivation types, social skills or communication, and in current circumstances under COVID, as Przemek mentioned, also industry adaptability, flexibility, and ability to learn fast. As I said, there is a bunch of research papers that describe these links with psychometrics, with job performance metrics. But we also investigated it in our research, and we find out that nonconformism, flexibility, strong leadership motivation, and tendency towards heuristic thinking are very highly correlated to contextual performance. So this is the measure of walking an extra mile, all of the things that we do in the context of our work, but they're not our regular duties. When it comes to higher task performance, so whether we can perform our duties well, here we found a strong link between achievement motivation and conscientiousness. Interesting finding also from our pilot study results that the levels of job satisfaction are strongly connected to the team orientation. So something that is our personality trait, not the characteristic of the project or the team. Our ability to bond with team members is a strong driver of job satisfaction, regardless of the project characteristics.
So how can companies actually get to that level of understanding of their workforce? Is where Talent Alpha Human Cloud platform comes into play. We have built this platform to help companies to better manage, measure, access, and share IT talents, unlocking a number of use cases. One of the ways that we are capturing this data is by our proprietary Talent Lab app that really captures those psychometric measures that Dominika has been describing. This product is up and living, but then we are bringing it together into our talent management app with all of the data that we are collecting from people are building this comprehensive 360 view of individuals working within our organization. This is built on really an in-depth understanding of skill taxonomies. We've done a heavy lifting job of really breaking down key IT roles. And you can see on this chart the number of skills we are capturing per IT job family, which really allows us to build those comprehensive, we call them LinkedIn profiles on steroids, so with up to 500 data points about every single individual working in your organization. And having this data, we can actually unlock a number of use cases, starting with a virtual bench or actually or internal talent marketplaces, because that's where we can match the need of the organization with the capabilities that are already available within it. Yet another use case that we are leveraging this is to help companies to actually augment their workforce with so-called virtual bench. So as of now, there are over 200 companies running our software where they measure and index talent using our technology, and then they share the spare capacity with companies that actually have a need for talent. So using our technology, you can actually very quickly ramp up or down your IT professionals, being also able to match them not only on the technical skills, again, on a very deep level understanding them, but also based on their psychology. And I think with that, we will turn into the Q&A.
Great, thank you both. Really interesting presentation. We do have time now for a few questions that have come in from the audience. The first question reads, how do you think the HR function will change in the IT world as a result of COVID-19?
It's a very interesting question. So as we said, we believe that there will be a number of fundamental undergoing changes going, right? But the key thing would be moving from managing headcount to managing skill count, right? And then what that means for HR professionals is that they will have to start thinking about workforce and talent way more broadly and get really way more creative on how to source given skills required to the jobs done. We believe that HR professionals will also have to get more familiar with some of the technologies existing out there to help them get this quite a difficult task done.
Yeah, absolutely. Second question here, how does Talent Alpha's Human Cloud platform compare with other HR tech solutions for accessing and managing tech talent?
So we compare, when you look at the landscape of so-called talent platforms such as Upwork or TopTal or freelance.com, where we are really different is that we are sourcing talent from existing organizations. So we are a B2B2B platform, right? We are tapping into organizations that have unutilized human capacity, and we allow others to share that. Now, what is really making our platform unique is how deeply we go into understanding talent sitting in these organizations. Now, as you could see throughout the couple of last slides of this presentation, we are now also starting selling the capabilities of measuring and managing talent to large organizations who not necessarily want to just use external talent, but want to better understand their own human assets.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally here, the last question is, what does Talent Alpha consider the skills of the future? Which is a great question.
I think I'll pass it over to Dominika.
I'll take it. Taking into account all of the challenges of the future and how the human cloud would shape the work of the future, I think the most important skills would be the most generic ones, actually. So industry adaptability, flexibility, and ability to learn quickly. So learning agility and general mental ability. These will become increasingly important as we will have to upskill many times in our lives, change the jobs, change the environments. So these will become increasingly important, even more than crystallized knowledge and abilities.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you both so much. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for today. If you did submit a question that we didn't get a chance to answer, then someone from the team will follow up with an email afterwards. I'd like to say thank you both ever so much for being involved in this webinar, and thank you both again so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was our pleasure.